Yes, sir.
from my side.
All right. Yeah, that's great. That's great. I thought my internet connection was shaky, but seems like it's really good. So basically, we are going to be talking about application development using Flutter, the Google framework. Yeah, and we're going to be going through the overview. Why Flutter? Why not go for Java or Swift or Objective C? So those are other languages that people use to develop apps, and let's say Kotlin. Yeah, why not those? Why Flutter? Yeah. So today we're going to be looking at that, and then I'm assuming we most of us are going to be using Windows computers. So I'll also be taking you through how we can put Flutter, install Flutter on our Windows computers. But for those of you who have, let's say, Linux or Mac computers, we can see how to direct you on how to install Flutter also, since we want everyone to be able to follow up practically. So yes, Brian Angoda Nyanga is my full name, and that's my email address. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I typically reply to messages. Yeah. So our learning objectives throughout the course will be to understand the core principles of Flutter app development and also to gain proficiency in that programming language, the foundation of Flutter. And for that, we shall majorly look at the core building blocks that help people write code. For example, let's say variables, how we store data, control flow, and controlling logic. Basically, certain things that are in programming, we are going to look at that as the foundations of Flutter programming. So in the Dart programming language. So we're going to look at it, but not too detailed. We shall look at what is enough for us to build the application. And as we go on, we introduce more concepts that people are comfortable with, because we have a diverse set of skill sets, as you can look at the attendance right now. Yes, so we shall try to make sure we level the learning field for everyone to be able to understand. Then also we are going to master the use of widgets, which are the building blocks of Flutter user interfaces. So in Flutter, basically, they like to term things widgets. Okay, so everything in Flutter is called a widget when you're using the Flutter framework. Okay, let's say you can have widgets for buttons, text, images, okay, containers. Those are widgets in Flutter, and they help you be able to construct user interfaces that solve certain problems or display certain information. Then also, we are going to look at how to implement effective state management techniques for Flutter apps. So state management is a concept that apps use to store data.
Mr. Brian, just a moment. It
Yes, please.
appears the slides are not moving, and it appears
No,
also other some.
I'm not yet scrolling.
Oh, it appears also other
Yeah.
students are not seeing your screen. I don't know why, but ours we can't see the screen.
Oh, they're not seeing my screen
Yeah, they are just
because
in the chat saying that they can't see the screen, but they should be able to see the screen.
they really should. So,
Sometimes maybe it might be connection issues because
okay.
from my side I am able to see the screen.
Yeah, because I already shared that tab, so I would wonder why it is not showing.
Okay, just continue.
Okay,
Okay.
okay,
I also can't see the screen.
The rest of
okay.
you,
Let me try
don't
it.
get worried. We are making sure that we are recording, so just in case, we shall just share the recording.
Okay, so it's appearing on yours, Bosco, right?
Right, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So, I'm really sorry about those who not be able to see. I would really wish for everyone to see the screen, but no worries. I'm going to share the slides, with everyone. I sent a copy already to Bosco, and then also the video is going to be available since it's being recorded. So I was talking about state management techniques for Flutter apps. So basically, state management is that concept of being able to store data and share it between screens. The most prominent example I can use is, let's say, when you log into an app like WhatsApp. Usually, it stores your contacts and your images, right? And then also Yeah, things like your contact and your images. So each time you use WhatsApp, you don't have to re-add your contact to show that you're the one using the account. So the app is actually storing state of your account. So it is managing state there. That is one of the explanations for state management. And then as you keep navigating between screens, you can see that your data is shared between multiple screens. So that is state management. Yeah. So building user interactions with gestures and animations, that's another thing that we are going to be able to look at. For example, we're going to look at when you tap the screen once, or you double tap, or you long press. Those are some of the gestures that you should look out for in this course. And then animations. For example, how do pages flip beautifully? How do we make sure these pages flip? How do we change the seconds? Okay. For example, when you're looking at e-commerce applications and then you're trying to browse through the images, the way the images transition, okay, those are animations. So we're going to try to tap into that also. And then at number six, we look at working with APIs and data persistence in Flutter applications. Okay. So basically, APIs in full are called application programming interfaces. So this is just a big word thrown around, but it really only means that an API is something that provides you access to a certain resource. For example, if I want, I can use an API to get a list of courses offered at Risto University. Okay, that is an API. Okay, it is like that waitress at a restaurant that goes and you just give it your order, you give the waitress your order, she goes to the kitchen and then they work on your order and then they bring it back to you. So an API is like that link, okay? So we're going to see how to work with APIs and data persistence. So when you fetch something from, let's say, Restore, let's say I've fetched a list of courses that are offered. I don't want to keep fetching it. So I persist it. I store it in my Flutter application so that I don't have to keep what? Sending the request because I already sent it the first time. So that saves like data and internet in your applications. We are going to look at how to do that also in this course. And then there is navigation between different screens and managing app flow. Yeah. So by now, I think most of us can attest that Android phones and let's say iOS phones have different navigation patterns. But then Flutter makes it so easy for us because they built the SDK itself, looking at these two platforms majorly. But right now they have expanded to look at about 5 platforms as we're going to look at also. So we're going to see how to move between different screens in Flutter. Yeah. Then also we're going to understand, look at the best practices for building robust and maintainable Flutter applications. Okay. Yeah. So when you're building apps, you don't have to build an app not thinking about the future, because then you may not work at that company forever. And mind you, don't say I don't have to make the code look good, or I don't have to structure my project well because I'm the only one going to be working on this code. I don't care about the next person. No, even the way you write your code can earn you very good recommendations by your employer. If in case you want to go to the next company, they'll say his code is maintainable and therefore we recommend him for that position. So yes, so it's something that we should all put into practice. So we're going to look at how to structure our code and make sure it's not too complex. Okay. And then also we shall look at how to deploy a Flutter app to both Android and iOS platforms. I guess yes, Bosco can be able to prepare for us these platforms early on, so that when it comes to time to deploy something sample, we can deploy something to the both Android and iOS platforms. Yeah. So for our intro for today, we basically are going to look at uh, majorly 3 things. Yeah. But if time allows, we can jump into programming and if everyone is still fresh. Yeah. So we're going to look at introduction to mobile app development and the Flutter framework. Why is it called the Flutter framework? Is it really a framework? What are the advantages and disadvantages of using Flutter? And then we shall look at the setup of Flutter development. For those people who have high-end machines and they can use Android Studio, yeah, they can use that. But today I'm going to focus on something that I'm very sure 90% of the computers that you people have can be able to run, and that is VS Code. Yes. So when I'm making sure, when I'm showing people how to use Flutter, I focus on the tools that are the most available. But if you, in case you get a high-end computer, you can always go for Android Studio. But then the Android Studio these days is really memory intensive. So I focus on VS Code so that everyone can be able to run Flutter apps and get the products out there. Yes. Then I was supposed to look at that programming language, which is a language that powers what? Flutter. Variables, data types, and operators. Okay. And then there is building basic user interfaces with Flutter. Okay, Flutter widgets, text, images, and containers. But I can't assume that we have all set up what Flutter here, and yet I wanted us to be able to have some level of reactive programming, whereby if there's some code running here, you can be able to also run it in your IDE. And tomorrow, I will be able to share code snippets that I'm going to be using to facilitate this. So as I'm explaining the code, you have a copy of the code and you can tweak it in any way you want so that you'll be able to understand it. And here's the catch. The more you change the code that you've copied from somewhere, the more you can understand it. And the more you can understand code, the more you can apply it in a problem that you've never met before. Okay. So it's not like normal school whereby you just copy and paste content. Okay, we can even see that in mathematics, when you're studying math, you majorly learn concepts. So these concepts, we apply them to new questions you have not seen before. Same thing goes with programming. Yes, there are times when you can just copy some code from somewhere and it exactly works. But should it get a problem and you don't understand how it works, that's where the issue comes. So here we're going to focus on making sure you understand. I'll be providing the code to save your time from typing, but when it comes to understanding, I'll beg that everyone tries to tweak the code either during the lecture time or in your free time to make sure you understand how it runs. Yeah, that being said, let's talk about Flutter. What is it? It is Google's open source technology for creating mobile, desktop, and web apps with a single code base. So by a single code base, it simply means you're writing code in one place. You're not going to split and say, okay, this code is for web, this one is for desktop, and this one is for mobile. By web, I mean those apps that run on websites. Okay, those are web applications that run on web browsers. So web browsers are examples can be like Chrome, Mozilla, Firefox, Microsoft Edge, Opera Mini. Yeah, all those are what? Web browsers. So Flutter can be used to build web applications too, as of now. And there is more to that. Unlike other popular solutions, it is not a framework or library. It's a complete SDK. That is a software development kit. By that, it means it's fully packed with a lot of features and tools that you can use to come up with your applications. Okay? So if we talk about a library, it's basically a reusable piece of code that you put in your application to perform a certain function. For example, if you look at the apps out there, let's say camera apps, not every camera app out there has programmers that wrote the code from scratch. For example, the code that actually triggers the camera and turns it from portrait, let's say, to landscape mode. No, they're using libraries. So the same concept is used in Flutter. A lot of libraries are built in so that it can help the work of the application developer become very easy. Okay. So when we talk about a framework also, it's a structure that provides you with a skeleton architecture for building software. So the key words here are structure and skeleton architecture. Okay. So basically, the same way you look at, let's say, when an architect wants to do something, they can come up with some sketches, this drawing. The client says, okay, I want this, I want this, I want this. Okay, then they come up with that architectural drawing. Okay, so that architectural drawing is like the skeleton that the civil engineers are going to now use to actually put up the real building. Okay, so you use that. So in Flutter is also like they talk about the framework side of it. Okay, remember Flutter is an SDK, software development kit. So it has these, it has libraries and framework. So the framework part is the one that helps you structure your application. Okay, so remember, we're saying all these library, framework. For the framework, we know Flutter is fully in the Dart programming language. But the libraries may be built on other languages such as Kotlin, C++, or Java. Okay, and that's why they're called libraries. They're like batteries that come into your framework to power it up, okay, to make it easier. So Flutter has tons and tons of it to make sure our work is on delivering solutions and not focusing on things that are too complex, because people actually spend a lot of time and to research and come up with the best practices that this framework of ours uses. So a framework is a set of tools that serves as a foundation for your app, requiring you to fill in the blanks with your code to complete the entire structure. And also, we shall look at a Flutter app structure when we reach that time. Yeah, but I don't want us to get there and sway off the learning path. We shall see that the structure of a Flutter app that is bare bones. By bare bones, I mean that you've not yet written any code. It's really nice and clean. And from there, the framework builders give you the freedom to do whatever you want, and that's where we say sometimes with great power comes great responsibility. So you have to keep it simple, make sure everyone can understand your code, and also make sure your code doesn't get dirty. Don't get lost in your own code, because Flutter makes it so easy. You can find yourself writing too much code that is really not needed. And also, it is really not good to be able to just write certain things from scratch. If you can use a library, just use the library, save your time, and make sure the problem is solved. So they say Anistical has a much wider scope. It's a collection of tools, including libraries, documentation, APIs, sometimes frameworks, and more, giving you all you need for software development. And that's the case with Flutter. It already contains everything necessary to build cross-platform applications. Yeah. So this diagram basically shows you the architecture of Flutter. Okay. So from the topmost part, the framework that is powered by that.
Again, Mr. Brian, looks like we are
Yes,
not
please.
seeing the slides moving.
Okay.
We are not yet on that diagram that you're explaining.
Okay. Let me just cross check
Yeah, now
because I
we
was
pretty
still
much.
sharing. Yeah, I think there is some lag. I think there is some
Okay.
network lag. Yeah, there is network lag that is able to send a voice before the image, so it's okay.
All right.
So I don't know if we are all now seeing it. Yeah, this is the Flutter architecture. So the framework itself is powered by two libraries, two design systems. So for those of you who have been in web development, you've been seeing the Google's design system for Material. So Material is basically a design system that Google uses for all the applications, and then they have enforced it into Flutter, such that when you build applications using Material, your applications will look like Android kind of applications or Google kind of applications. Then when you use Cupertino, Cupertino basically structures your application to look like iOS applications and those all those that run on Mac. Okay, so navigation structures, how you use menus and the widgets, all of them look like iOS or Mac style. Okay, things from Apple. So when you're using Flutter, those are the two things to think about. You always think about those two things. So even if you're building an app in a single code base, you should need to know that there are design systems that you have to take care of. Okay, so there is Material and Cupertino. We shouldn't forget that. But the one we shall be majorly using will be Material for now. But then we shall also sample some Cupertino widgets like icons and all that, since it's really rich. It has a ton of features also. So under that we have widgets. So widgets are now the ones that are you choose a widget, whether it's Material, Cupertino. Let's say the icons, the images, okay, the text widgets, uh, the menus, taskbars, things like that. Okay, safe areas. Those are all widgets that are given in Flutter. So you choose the style you want. You want it in Material or you want it in Cupertino. Okay, so under that we have that rendering. Okay, so widgets are generally rendered in real time. That's why we have that rendering layer that renders these widgets. Okay, so when you're rendering, also you choose how do you want the animations to come, how do you want them to be painted. When I talk about painting, I mean colors. Then gestures. How do you want people to react to these widgets? All these widgets to react to the touch and other gestures that are provided by, let's say, the Android or iOS platforms. Okay. On top of that, we have what we call the foundation. So foundation is basically something that allows you to be able to use these things as widgets in Flutter. Okay. So it's also part of the framework and it encompasses all those things. Yeah. So at a lower level, we can look at the engine, the C++ engine. Okay, it has these other complex things called service protocols, that isolate setups, that runtime management, composition, rendering, frame scheduling, frame pipelining, platform channels, system events, and asset resolution and text layout. So these are low level functionalities found in the framework that most people don't really use. Okay, so we may interact with, let's say, most programmers sometimes that I see may try to interact with things such as isolates, okay, things such as platform channels, okay, yeah. So, but that's just it. Most people don't reach that level. It's not given to everyone to use, because at most of the times, whatever you want to do, you can do it through platform channels. An example I can give you about platform channels is, let's say you want to ask. Let me again use the camera example. Okay, so you want to use let's say a front or a back camera on a phone. Okay, so every plugin in Flutter cannot give you direct access. So it uses a platform channel. This platform channel runs on, let's say, underlying Java code or Kotlin code. Okay, so it doesn't do it directly via Flutter. So that's the framework. The framework helps the Flutter developer and saves the Flutter developer from such pain. So libraries are built to perform certain actions for you. So for you, you just stay in the widget, the framework level, and you keep doing your things. But then you can be able to send commands to the underlying hardware using platform channels. And then isolates are for those people who are really savvy about how the applications run. You don't want your screens to be freezing anyhowly. You don't want your app to start crashing on devices which have, let's say, less RAM. Okay, so you try to use these features to be able to run pieces of code separately, or you time them so that the memory is not completed. Yeah. Then a very lower level one is the embedder, which is platform specific. These ones are for the native plugins, event loops. How does the application actually start and when does it stop? When is it paused? Okay. Then for app packaging, what are some of the things that when you now want to push this app as a accomplished app, what do we pick? How do we pick assets? How do we pick these code files? How do we bundle it so that we can now put it into our phone and it will actually run? Okay. Then native plugins. Some of the plugins I was talking about. Also, there are native plugins such as the rendering engines also. Very important in the Flutter architecture. Then the render surface setup, all those, the thread setups. So threads basically, threads are those pieces of, those are those functionalities that enable people to be able to use the function, let's say the data isolate on the second level the framework of the architecture. That data isolate, it's powered by these threads. Okay, so the lowest level powers the second lowest, and then the highest level is sits on top of all these. So this is how Flutter is actually what the whole architecture comes into place and helps us developers not to suffer from these things that we had to do manually in platforms such as Kotlin and Java, and people still do it in Swift and Objective C for those who build iOS apps. Yeah. So you can see that the framework has really been bundled with a lot of complex things, and then they bring it and make it so easy so that everyone can be able to build applications. Okay, but we shall look at those advantages later. So I'll be able to go to the next slide. Okay. So, like I was explaining, the three main architectural layers of Flutter. The embedder, it uses platform specific language and makes the app run on any OS. Okay, by the platform specific language, you know that. Uh,
Yes, Brian.
yes, please.
Yeah, I think as you're presenting, maybe if it would be better you just click on that slide, then I think it will come on display. Otherwise, if you're scrolling from that side, we can't see anything moving. So you
Okay,
rather click
you're not
on the
you're
side
not
where you
seeing
can.
them.
Yeah, when you click the slideshow side, we can see
Okay,
something. But as you're
all right.
scrolling, we can't see anything.
Okay, what are you seeing right now?
We are still on the framework table, flat
Oh,
architecture.
oh
Yeah.
my. So I'm on another page. Oh my. So how about I do this? If I do this, do you see the normal
Yeah.
uh screen?
Once you do that, we can see. I think
Okay.
once you
I think
click on the slide,
yeah.
we can see. But if you're
Let,
just scrolling, then we can't see.
let me do this. Let me just use this to run through this so that we can get these concepts.
Right.
All right, thank you very much. So from the diagram up, I tried to explain it without bringing this to you so that you could understand it way better. But then let me just read these points to you. The embedder, the lowest that we saw, it uses a platform-specific language and makes the app run on any OS. Okay, so this is something that I explained. Yeah, so platform-specific languages. Let's say if it's Android, it's going to be majorly Kotlin these days. If it's iOS, it's going to be Swift. Okay. So that's what the embedder does. It helps you transform all this code that you're writing in Dart and Flutter into platform-specific implementations. Okay. Then there's an engine. This one is written in C/C++, and it provides low-level implementation of Flutter's core APIs. So like I said, APIs are application programming interfaces. So when Flutter wants to do something, it will do it through an API that is written in, let's say, C or C++, to perform certain actions on the hardware. The hardware being your mobile phone or a browser or a desktop computer, any of those. So here they talk about the graphics, including a Skia 2D graphics library. So this is basically 2D. That's why you see that Flutter doesn't really have mobile apps that are built for 3D applications like high-end gaming, okay? Or when people want to do 3D shopping applications, you can't really do it much in Flutter. So Flutter majorly supports 2D. That's why people keep it simple. They keep it for business. They keep it for, yeah, just those applications that are for productivity, but you don't really have a lot of graphics on it. Yeah. Then there is a text layout, okay, for rendering your text. Then file and network I/O. So files basically, when you talk about a file, we can mean a Word document, PDF, music file, an MP3, a video file, and then network I/O, network, yes. So this is input and output, okay? The ability for your phone or the framework or the app to be able to pick data from the internet and also download data to the phone. So that is network. Okay. Then there's accessibility support. How are we able to use Flutter to be able to increase brightness, let's say, of a screen? Or if you're building a mobile apps such as a movie playing app, how do we make sure we keep the screen light on without going off when a movie is playing? Okay, that is accessibility also, and colors. Then plugin architecture. How do we pick external libraries and be able to use it? Then there's also a Dart runtime and compile tool chain. Okay, so these are the ones that Dart runtime actually executes the Dart code, and that is Flutter code. Then the compile tool chain, the one that actually compiles your code into, let's say, an app bundle that you can put on Google Play Store when you're finished building your application. And then the framework, like we talked about it. A framework based on that programming language, its implementation is optional, but it provides a rich set of libraries that can be divided into layers. Basic foundational classes, rendering layer, widget layer, and material/slash Cupertino libraries. Okay. So basic foundational libraries, those are libraries. Let's say a math library. A math library will be able to help you do things such as using symbols such as pi, let's say. Okay. Yeah, so those are math libraries, libraries that help you convert let's say, an integer to a double. Those are data types in that programming language, but we shall look at all that, okay? So these are foundational classes that Flutter gives you so that you can be able to build something powerful out of it. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll go to the next slide. So when we talk about Flutter 2 and Flutter 3, like I said, in 2019, when I say programming Flutter, we were basically using Flutter 2, and it was really doing everything, and we were really comfortable with it. But then Google, as we know it, was not impressed. So they had to build Flutter 3. So with Flutter 3, we were able to build applications for web, and also subsequently we were able to push applications to desktop. Okay, building desktop applications which people originally use, let's say C Sharp, C++, and Java, or let's say Visual Basic to build with. Flutter can now do that. Okay, yeah. So Flutter 2 and Flutter 3, those are the main differences. Then I can also read for you this. It was originally designed as mobile-focused SDK for creating native Android and iOS apps with a single code base. So Google was at work developing and refining its brainchild, that is Flutter. So with Flutter 2, which was released in with Flutter 2 released in 2021, came along a long-promised capability of building apps for web and Windows. Okay. Then Flutter 3, which went live in 2022, offered stable support for Linux and Mac OS running on both Intel and Apple Silicon processors. So those people who have Linux computers, Linux operating systems can attest to this, that you can actually now build something for Linux using Flutter. Okay, and those using Mac can also be able to say that, yeah, you can build applications for what? For Mac OS. So the same one you build for Linux, you can compile it for Mac OS because we have a single code base. The beauty of Flutter. Yeah. So in total, the technology enables you to design UI across 6 platforms. Okay. So that comes with a catch. Let's not just say you can do it for 6 platforms. There's always more work. You need to panel bit a bit so that it can be able to actually work with these 6 platforms. Because definitely a screen that is for a tablet is not the same as a screen that is for a mobile phone. And it's not the same that is a screen for a 19-inch monitor or a 24-inch monitor. Those are different screens. So as a developer, you really need to put in your problem-solving abilities to be able to build user interfaces that are really intuitive. So the third version of Flutter continues an expansion into the game dev domain, which hasn't been Flutter's priority to this point in time. In addition to its 2D game engine, Flame. So Flame is a game engine for Flutter, by the way, and we shall be able to look at it a bit, but we won't really build much on Flame. We'll just look at it, and those people who are enthusiasts for game development, you can go ahead and build 2D games, for example, chess games. If you look at Angry Bird, you can try to build an Angry Bird version for yourself. Yeah, those kinds of games can be built in Flutter because they are 2D games. And that SDK offers Casual Games Toolkit, enabling the quick design of puzzles, card and board games, and strategies for iOS and Android. It's pre-integrated with in-app advertising via AdBobs, so that enables you gain some revenue, and also in-app purchases to monetize your applications. You may have played certain games whereby you reach a certain level and they want you to pay some money, otherwise you can't continue to the next level. Or the game becomes so hard that you just have to buy certain weapons or something for you to be able to like beat the current level and go to the next. So in-app monetization is done through that. So you can build your Flutter app, and that's how you can also make money with your app if you go into the game direction side of things. Yeah. So you can link it to Apple's Game Center or Google Play game services. Yeah. So if you're building games, you really need these 2 platforms. But yeah, using Flutter. Then among other enhancements, the third release introduced support for foldable phones for Material Design 3. This version of the Android-oriented set of components and tools to create beautiful UI. It also improved integration with Firebase backend services used by 62% of Flutter developers. Yeah. So Firebase is a platform that is used by not only Flutter developers, even normal web developers and other people. They use Firebase to be able to do things such as authentication in the apps, okay, signing up and signing in, and then there is a password reset, and then there's notification, and then a database where you can store all your data. On top of that, they also offer file storage. So file storage is where you can, if you're building an app, let's say that you want to do, let's say, a music platform, music streaming platform. Yes, Flutter can offer you, the Firebase can offer you that you can upload your music to Firebase backends, okay? And the billing is really understandable. So long as you write your code well and you make sure that your code is not making too many requests to the Google servers. So they don't bill you too much. They bill you according to how you use it. So if people are not using your application, they can't bill you outrageously. Yeah, so that's the beauty with Google. Yeah, so when you talk about cross-platform app development, it has long been a viable alternative to fully native engineering. Okay. Yeah. So as we had someone say, I guess it was it was Dr. Bira Nathan, who is a medical doctor and a full stack engineer. He said he has built some applications using, let's say, Java, native platforms, basically. If you're to notice that those applications, if you're to build one version for Android, you really have to rewrite the whole code. Let's say for iOS, the organization now needs to move to iOS. Okay, so that is not the case with Flutter. Flutter is cross-platform, and you write the code once and you just tweak a few things. Okay, like I'd say, the way a menu appears in Android is not the same way a menu will appear in iOS. So those are the only differences that come with it. Okay? Yeah, so, and also gestures. There are certain animations that are not in iOS, and it's the same case with Android. Although with Android allows you to break so many rules. You can bring in your animations of iOS to Android, and no one will really complain. They will see it as cool and all. But then it's not the same case when you want to send your animations of Android to iOS. Sometimes back then, apps used to get rejected. They ask you, why are you trying to bring Android styles into iOS? But these days, they just said, oh, it's okay. Developers don't have the time to make things too perfect, so they allow your app work. So it's up to you to be able to customize it when you want to. Remember, when someone is using an iPhone, they expect the app to behave the way other iPhone apps behave. So it's up to you, the developer, to be able to consider that. Okay. So I think I've explained this. I won't have to read what is here. So some of the benefits of cross-platform mobile app development. We have cost effectiveness. It enables investing just once and in a single team. So if you get a team of, let's say, Android developers and a team of iOS developers, those are two teams. Let's say each of them are like five. And then you're paying them, let's say, 5,000. I don't know which currency I should just simply just say 5,000. Each of them you're paying 5,000, 5,000. So those are 10 people, okay? That's around 50,000. But then if you had just one team, okay, or 5 people who know Flutter, okay, you could even hike their salaries to, let's say, 7,000, and you'll still save some more, and they'll be able to deliver an app that can be compiled for all these platforms. See that? So when Flutter came, startups had it easy. Found that startups were able to build apps and be able to ship to both iOS and Android in record amounts of time. Okay, yeah. So that is one technology also. One technology, and it's doing a lot in the company. Then the reusable code. Certain code bases are really too reusable. Let's say login and sign up screens, such things. You don't rewrite it once you have it. You just copy and paste it. Especially when you're in the same organization and you're, let's say, building an app for different departments or certain organization. So you copy such code and you'll be able to reuse it, okay? So that really makes Flutter so easy to adapt to, and also maintainability, okay? There is no need to maintain different code bases. Let's say we're pushing out a new feature. So one team has to go and, let's say, add the feature on iOS, then this other team has to also add the feature on Android. No. So this one, you add the feature and then it's available for all platforms. So you can deploy it at will. So it helps a company move really fast. Those are some of the advantages of Flutter and cross-platform app development. But anyway, these are the examples of cross-platform frameworks. There is Xamarin. Xamarin is a C# framework, and you can use it for building mobile apps. I haven't used it extensively. I think I tried it out, but I didn't really like it because First of all, the development environments are really heavy for my computer at the time, and it's still heavy for you to be able to have such a development environment to build apps using Xamarin. Then there's React Native. So personally, I was more of a back-end engineer by then. So basically dealing with databases and building APIs and all that. So I didn't really like JavaScript too much. That's why I opted for Flutter. But then you can use React Native also. It's really it's a good one. It's one of the best competitors of Flutter. So it uses JavaScript and React.js to be able to build mobile apps. And then there's Ionic. It's also powered by JavaScript and TypeScript. So TypeScript is also like JavaScript, but then for it, it's a bit strict. You don't just write variables, and you've not specified the type of data that a variable is going to be able to hold. Then there is NativeScript. So NativeScript is also one of those cross-platform frameworks, and it's really rare to find guys using it. So it uses TypeScript and JavaScript also. But the languages, the order of the languages shows that if TypeScript is most used, that means most of the code base is going to be written in TypeScript. Then if JavaScript is also used and it's the second one, then there's less code going to be there. Then when you look at Flutter, it's just that. So when you learn that, you've really learned most of Flutter. The rest is just going to be child's play. Yeah. So these are the advantages of Flutter. I know we have been talking about a lot of good things of Flutter, and it doesn't hard to go through them. I won't explain too much. I want us to be able to beat some time. So it has close to native performance. Okay. Yeah, the rendering speeds for Flutter are really good. So if your device is really good, you can have up to 120 hertz. Those are refresh rates for your screen. So yes, your screen can be able to support very good apps and have animations that don't freeze, because some phones are really slow, especially if you're using a phone that has a bit Android versions that are a bit older. You will find that when you have certain transitions, it takes some time, and that time you can really notice it. If you're very intuitive, you will notice it. Okay? Then there's fast, consistent, and customizable rendering. Okay? You can actually see how the rendering happens, and then it has to be consistent. So Flutter makes sure it's consistent. You just have to make sure the devices that you're testing on are also a wide range. If you're testing an app, you make sure you test it on at least into the app, so that the app size is really small. Okay, that's why when you look at an app such as let's say Facebook Lite, very tiny, very tiny, but then it has a pack of features, a ton of features, and not all of them are actually built into the app. But then the issue of app size is also very important. You try to minimize the space that you're going to use on someone's device as much as possible. So Flutter doesn't really do a very perfect job there, but it's still good. Yeah, I think these other things we already talked about. Third-party libraries, there are not really many disadvantages I can mention about Flutter. Yeah. So I don't know if some of us have devices right now. We could go through the process. I can walk you through the process, or I'll just be able to talk about it, and this slide will be available. And trust me, these steps always work. Okay? They always work for setting up Flutter, because it is the minimalistic step everyone follows for putting Flutter on your device without using Android Studio. The moment you use Android Studio, then you know you're going to have an active internet connection 24/7 as you set up these tools. Okay, but then for you to set up a Flutter development environment /dat, if you want to be able to code that, you should be able to download what they call a JDK. A JDK is basically a Java development kit. So why do we need a JDK? Because still Android phones are kind of also powered by Java at some level. Okay, yeah, so that's why we always need a JDK to be able to compile for us that code that we write in that. Yeah, then we need Android command line tools. So command line tools are those tools that help you perform certain actions on Android, and they are needed when you're building Flutter apps. Then we download Flutter itself from the official Flutter site, and then there's Git. So Git is what they call a version control tool. So a version control simply means you want to be able to keep the history of how your code has changed. If yesterday you added something, let's say you changed some colors in an app, and today your boss doesn't want it or the client doesn't want it, instead of manually changing it, you just type a command and it reverses. they change. You go back to the original colors that you wanted. So Git helps you do that. And also, let's say if your laptop gets spoiled or gets stolen, yeah, you are able to find your code, let's say on GitHub. You push your code to GitHub. So Git and GitHub are really nice technologies that help us developers have an easy time. Okay. Then there's VS Code. VS Code is an IDE. By an IDE, I mean an integrated development environment. It's something you use for coding. Okay. You can also use it for running your code, and then you can see the output of your code like that. It's the what we're going to be using for coding. So, and it's not very heavy. We can actually download it also. Yeah, VS Code is really good. Yeah, so those are the main things needed for Flutter. So the main steps, if you're on Windows, you can create a folder such as this. Let me share my whole entire screen now. So this is VS Code, okay?
Yes, please.
It helps us, and as you can see, I'd already written some Dart programs here, yeah,
Yes, please.
that we're going to look at tomorrow. The first program, variables, operators, loops, and all that. Yeah, so we're going to look at these tomorrow. I'll be able to share these files, okay? But then I was talking about where you put Flutter, that Windows Flutter. Okay, go to this PC.
Yes, how can I help you, please?
Are you seeing this folder, Android? Okay. So the Android folder is where I will download my Flutter and I put it, okay? So this is my folder for Flutter, it's inside Android, okay? So when you go here, I tell you about making a folder called Android. So you put it in local disk C, for those of us who are using Windows, since we said we want to base on Windows for now. Okay, you create a folder called Android, then when you download Flutter, we put the Flutter SDK inside there, okay? So before you even download Flutter, you make sure you have Git. So Git is a version control tool, like I said. It enables you to maintain the app versions. You can be able to see the history of how your code evolved and be able to have different versions of your code, okay? You can have code that is working and you don't want to make, and you want to add other changes that you know may break your code. So you can separate the code that is working from the code that you're testing. Okay, then when it finally works, you now add it to the code that is working. So that is something that Git helps you do. Okay, so you can install Git. So this is how the website for this looks like. Yeah, but then I can even go to the browser and we can check it out. This is the website. Okay, so you can download Git, and in case you want to learn how to use Git, there are tutorials. And never watch a tutorial that is above 30 minutes on Git. Never do that. You'll be discouraged for nothing. Yet the things you need to use are very simple. You typically use less than 10 commands of Git to be able to make your life easy. So you don't have to do that. Learn too much on Git. Basically, a video that is less than 30 minutes is very good for you. Sometimes even less than 20. Very good for you, and you learn Git. Okay. So then we talk about installing the Flutter SDK. So this link here is the one you can follow always. When you download the Flutter SDK, like you already saw in my computer, I already have Flutter in this folder. If I can open it, you see this. Yeah. So we can when you're downloading it, as long as you have some good internet, we can also check. There are multiple versions. Let's say mine was Windows. Okay. There is Mac, Linux, and Chrome OS. So Chrome OS is a bit, not common, but there are people who definitely have those. Yeah. So yeah, this is how you just go in here, and then you can have. They also tell you to have Git, but you don't have to have Visual Studio. Okay. Then the SDK, they can tell you to use these commands, but don't use the commands. Just download and install. Okay. So when you click this, a download manager should be able to pop up. That's if you have a download manager. But if you don't, then you don't. But here, mine is telling me that I already have this version. Okay. So this Flutter thing is about, I think, 700 MBs, if I'm not mistaken. Let me first try to continue downloading a brand new one. Okay, it's actually in a GB. It's a new version. It's like 1.21 GB. So that's why I wanted us today to go through this. You see how to download it. And then tomorrow we can start off with that, writing that code and really getting into the nice part of things. Yeah, so it's really downloading. My internet is quite fast, but I don't need it because I already have a copy. Yeah, so that's how you download this Flutter SDK using that link. Okay. So when you download it, you extract it to that Android folder inside local disk C, and you just name it Flutter and leave it there. Okay, so this is how the path will be: C/Android/Flutter. That's going to be your link. Okay, that's going to be your link for Flutter. So this is the same screen I was showing you in my browser. Okay, this is how it's going to look like. You click Windows, then you follow the prompts until you download your Flutter SDK. Okay. Then there's the OpenJDK. Download your Java, okay, your JDK, Java Development Kit. Those are also, you copy that link, you go to the browser, or you can just search for it. Okay. So here is it. Java right now is on version 22, Java 22. And very soon there'll be version 23, but don't run to that. Let's use 22 and below. If you get something from Java 8 to 22, you're a bit safe. That is something you can work with, and Flutter won't give you much of a problem. Okay. So here you can choose what you want. Okay. Debian packages, RM compressed, all these. Okay. So you choose the one you want. So if this is for Linux, then it's macOS, also different packages. Then there's Windows. So for Windows, you can, if your computer is a 64-bit, you can use it. Unfortunately, 32-bit computers have been the support for 32-bit computers have been phased out. So we don't have files for 32-bit computers. So these are files that you download and then you install. Okay. So when you install the other instructions, this is about 160 something. So when let's say you start a download like this, it shouldn't really take so long. If your internet is quite decent, it doesn't take so long. Okay. And then it will be done. Okay. I encourage you guys to have download managers. They speed up things. They help you download files faster. Yeah, I'll go ahead and cancel this because I already have it. Okay. So we install the executable and we add it to path. Okay. By adding it to path, on Windows there is something called environment variables. Okay. When I search for environment, okay, if I put env on my search bar there, okay, I'll be able to see system environment variables. Okay. So when we click this pop-up comes up, and then I can go and click this word environment variables in the next screen under advanced tab. Okay. And then there are the user variables, then there's the system variables. But what we're interested in is the system variables. Okay. So under system variables here, since we want Java, our JDK, Java, Flutter, Git, and all the other things we're going to install to be able to be discovered globally on our computer, we go to the path. Okay. So this path is where we try to edit. Okay. So in this path, you can now go and copy. Let's say if Java was, let's say our Flutter. Okay. So let's say our Flutter is on local disk C, inside Android, then Flutter. We come up to this folder called bin, because bin is where those files that are needed to execute commands reside. So we come to bin, then we click here. We copy what they call the path. So this is the path. The path is basically the route that the computer will use to discover your Flutter or your Java. So you look for the Flutter path, then you go and paste it inside here. Okay. But as you can see, mine is already pasted here. Android/Flutter/bin. It's already pasted. Clean. It's already there. Okay. So when I do this, then I go to my computer and I try to check for Flutter. It will definitely show me that I have Flutter. Same case for Java. So, and for Java, it's very important. Never miss that step. Make sure after installing Flutter, Java, we go and we check for it. So Java generally might be in program files. Let's check here. Since they said it's 64-bit, then you come and you see this Java here, the Java folder, 64-bit. So I see JDK 22. Okay. So I go to bin. Like I said, bin is a folder that is really having those files that can be executed via command line. Command line is that dark screen. So that means other programs can be able to use Java without opening Java. They use Java using commands. So here also we copy the path. But then if I go back to my environment variables here, I suspect that I have Java. Yes, here is my JDK22. The bin folder, so that path. So someone might be wondering how you copy that path. So basically, when you, let's say in the folder like this on Windows, you click up here. When you click up here, you realize that this thing will be highlighted. So when you copy that path, okay? You copy that path, and then you take that path and you paste it in your what? System environment variables here. So here you come to path. You don't click new, you click edit. So when you edit, you can add your own thing here. Let's say now I want to add any path I've copied. I can say click new and I paste, okay? Click new and paste. But since I already have Flutter, I don't need to paste it here. It's redundancy. It's going to just dirty my list, which is already clean. So I'll not paste it there, okay? So that is how we do it for Java, okay? This is the same site I was showing you for how to download the JDK. Then Android command line tools. These are another very important ones. So this enables you to do Android commands on your computer. Okay, these are the batteries that Android Studio also uses. So we don't really need Android Studio to be able to run our code, because Android Studio can be very intensive in terms of memory and CPU. Okay? And not everyone has computers that are high end. So my computer generally uses it has about 32 GB of RAM, and it's i7 12th generation, so it's pretty powerful, and I can pretty much build anything, but I prefer simplicity. I make sure the tools I'm using are the tools that I can guide someone else to use, so that they don't believe that I'm only using it because my computer is powerful. No. So these are the command line tools, okay? So when we click this, it will show us this dialog. So Google is very careful in terms of how you use their software. You must actually accept their licenses, so that if in case of anything, okay, if anything happens, you can't really blame them. You have to. So if you're building really serious software, you can take the time to read this. Okay, it's also not bad to read this. It's actually good practice to be able to read certain licenses. But since I've read it before, and I've been using this SDK, this command line tool, I don't really have to read it again. So I just click that I have read, then I download it. So yes, I've downloaded it before. So this dialog will tell me that you already downloaded it before. But then let me sample and show you the size. So this is about 146 MBs. So it doesn't also take long if you have a decent internet connection. So by decent, I think some of you have better internet than me. Let me show you my internet speed. My internet speed is basically supposed to be around 5 Mbps. Only that it's unlimited, so I can be able to download these files without worrying that the internet is going to be depleted. So with 5 Mbps, I'm able to do pretty much a lot, be able to download my files. Okay, so right now it's about 4.4, maybe because of network traffic. Yeah, but then it's pretty decent, and I can do some good work with it. So yes, downloading that. So when we download it, we extract it into Android, the Android folder. When you extract it, it's going to have this name. But then, that's not how we do it. When you extract it, you are going to have to put it into a subfolder called latest. Let me show you. So I go to my Windows, then I say Android. So when we come to CMD line tools, okay, this is the mother folder. Then inside it, there is latest. So all the content that is inside the extracted file that we extract from CMD line tools, I put it inside here, okay? Bin, lib, and all that, okay? So what I add to my path is whatever is inside here. This is the path I add. Like I told you, when you see bin, just know, that's your candidate for adding to path. So you click this and you copy it. So when you copy it, you run to your system environment variables. So you can create a new record. But since I already have it, where is it? I already have it here. So I don't need to re-add it. CMD line tool /latest /bin. Pay great attention to that latest. Don't just extract it and leave in the root folder. It has to be CMD line tool /latest /bin. Yeah, so for references, you can always check the video, this part, and be able to see how to install it. Yeah, it's really important. One of the most stressful things in using certain technologies is actually setting it up, which shouldn't really be a problem. But that's why we try to make sure that everyone is up to par. We will give this importance, but we could have skipped it, but we really give it importance because everyone has to know how to set it up. Not everyone is tech savvy. Yeah. So, and also if you find problem, you might find that there are other colleagues of yours who find it really easy to follow these steps because they are more tech savvy. So you allow them help you. It's very okay to ask for help in programming. In fact, those who don't ask for help be torturing themselves for nothing. No one will reward you for suffering to try to do something alone. Okay? So teamwork in programming is very important. Usually when you try to do something alone, it never really works out well. Teamwork is very important. So always allow a friend to help you when you get stuck. Yeah. So this is a command that you can run in case you don't want to use the manual method of putting the JDK to your path and all that. But then you see this first command, you don't really need to run it since we used an installable JDK. But if we had a JDK, a Java Development Kit that you don't just install, that you just extract, it would need that you have to run this command in the terminal. Okay, but then this one in particular, you need to run it. So this one, you copy it and then you go to your command line. So to get your command line, you can either search for it from here, command prompt. Okay, you don't have to run it as an admin, you just run it normally. But if you want to run it as an admin, it's also okay. But then I run it normally. Then you copy it and paste. And then you run, you press enter. But I don't want to do it again because it's going to set these variables twice on my computer, which I don't want. Information here. You just have to do this and this. Okay. Notice how the word CMD line 2/latest is here. Now, if you had not named your folder well here, okay, if you had not named your folder well here, you seem to get problems when it comes to running your Flutter, trying to install and running some command SDK. Okay, it's an SDK manager. So yes, so that thing that we added to the path in the previous slide is the one now we use to download what they call Android API levels, okay? Android SDKs. So Android 33, Android 34. When you look at the latest phones right now, I think we majorly have Android 34 on Google Pixels and certain high-end Samsungs. Okay, and yeah, so many Android phones actually have the latest Android SDKs. Okay, so here this code tries to tell you that it tries to help you install version 33 so that you can build apps using an SDK that is a bit up to date and it can target multiple platforms. We are lucky this SDK that you install also helps you build. It also supports the latest versions of Flutter, so you're pretty much sorted when it comes to this. And then also you download platform tools. So these commands you copy. These ones you're not supposed to skip. Okay, you copy, then you paste it here. You paste it in your command line, and you run it. But you should know that as you paste these commands, they need internet also. So these commands alone might consume about 2 GB of internet. So yeah, you'll need some internet for these. So if you're to make your calculations right, you might find that you're using about 4 GB of internet or 5 to set up Flutter. But then it's a one-time thing and you don't really have to do that again. Okay. So, and also you can save some of that bandwidth or that data, because data might be expensive. You can save it by someone downloading Flutter, the JDKs, Git, VS Code, and sharing it with you. So that the only thing you have to do is now, the only time you spend your data is when you're running these commands. So there, you do when you've saved costs. That's why it's also like I emphasize working as a team, sharing. Okay, you share these files. Yeah.
So yeah, you run these commands one by one by copying them and putting them in a terminal. And where it prompts you to press yes, you press a Y, and then you press enter, and then yeah, it installs for you. Okay, so this is able to install for you the Android versions that you want to develop for. So like here, I say the latest version is 35, and you can also specify it here if you want. But then personally, I don't usually like to run for the latest versions because they may not be stable enough. So I run for something that I've tested for some time and other people have tested and reported, because there might be security vulnerabilities and also performance bottlenecks that I don't want to experience. So I make sure I am careful in how I choose the SDKs. Yes. So as you're running those, after running these commands, there's this one for accepting licenses. Like I said, you're going to use these softwares, they're free, but then they want you to be able to agree that you're not going to use it in certain ways that are not appropriate. Every software out there that is free always has instructions on how you're supposed to use it, okay? You don't just use it anyhow. There are some that you're not even allowed to make money from, but fortunately for us, we're allowed to make money from these. Yeah, so when you do this, you will see licenses that you have to accept. So you keep pressing Enter Y for each, then you press Enter and you accept the license. Yeah. Then configuring the SDK path. This is another command. After you finish all those above steps, you come and you copy this command, basically, then you go and paste it in your command line, okay? So you copy it and you paste it in your command line. So what this command tells Flutter is that, hey, Flutter, so if you're looking for the Android SDK or anything concerning it, go and check into local disk C in the Android folder. You're going to find everything you need about the Android SDK. So even if Android Studio is installed on this computer, Flutter will strictly pick its SDK from this location that you've specified here. Okay, so this is the command that does that. That's why it's very important to run it. So this makes sure we are not slaves to Android Studio. Okay, it makes sure we don't really need Android Studio to install Flutter and run and build nice apps. Okay, it makes sure that even people who with computers that have low memory can be able to build amazing apps that can solve problems and also be able to improve on their financial statuses. Yeah. So that is a very important command. So another command is Flutter Doctor. It is a very important command to be able to see. When you run Flutter Doctor, basically you see what is happening. You can know what is going on. Okay, you can know what is going on. You can know what is going on in your Flutter installation. Okay, is Flutter detecting my IDEs? What's the version of Flutter? Is there something I'm missing? Okay, those are some of the things that the Flutter Doctor command tells you. So when you run Flutter Doctor and you see there are a lot of ticks, then you know that you're safe. So for example, when I run Flutter Doctor in this case, okay, I give it some seconds. So it's going to be checking certain things. So we can see here it's telling me that I'm on the channel stable 3.22.2 on Microsoft Windows, because I'm running Windows and this is my version of Windows, and my local is English on channel stable, and it's located at local disk C. Okay, it also tells me that I have GitHub, and this Flutter can also be updated using Git. So if I want to update my Flutter version, I don't have to download a new one. I can basically just use certain commands, and then I update my Flutter version. Okay, then framework revision. When was this framework updated? They tell you it 6 weeks ago, and then the engine review. So you now have Flutter, and you have that installed just by copying and pasting that Flutter extracted folder into your local disk C. You now have that installed, so you can run that apps independently. Remember, that is a programming language, so you can write code for it without even worrying about Flutter, just to do other stuff for you. So you can be able to run that code from here. Okay. So it also tells us about the Windows version we have, Windows 10, Android toolchain. So here it's telling us everything we have is set up really well. I have Android Studio on my computer. And the reason why I have Android Studio is because this computer has the ability to support it. Okay. And oftentimes I build certain apps using Kotlin and Java, but it tells me my VS Code is available. Then connected devices. This one tells you the devices that you can run your Flutter code on, Windows and Edge. Okay. Then network resources. Here it tells us that all expected network resources are available. Okay. Flutter can be able to access the internet and all that. So we are basically safe when it comes to this. Okay. So when you see this X on any item here, you just know that it's not available, and not all of them should alarm you. For example, I didn't install Visual Studio because it's too heavy. And why would I want to use Visual Studio that is so heavy? I can use VS Code that is just MBs. Okay, it's just MBs, and I can be able to build my Flutter apps effectively. Yeah. So this is the importance of running the Flutter Docker command. It tells you the health of your Flutter installation from step 1 up to the last step, and that you need to be able to develop. So you make sure if these 3 ticks appear first, you know that you're safe. So now the next ticks you look out for, let's say connected devices and VS Code. So if you have VS Code, you know that you can now start off with your Flutter development. Yeah. Yes. So up to that. Oh well, I didn't notice I was muted. Sorry about that.
It's okay now.
All right. Okay, so I was saying that we can be able to accept all licenses for using Flutter Docker in order for us to be able to build apps with Flutter. If you don't accept these licenses, then we shall always have crashes. It will always tell you that you have not accepted licenses. Please run this command to accept licenses. Okay. Then I was talking about Flutter apps. So let me try to run this. Usually you need to have test apps to be able to run Flutter. You can be able to test a Flutter app. So here I don't have this, but usually when you have a Flutter app in the computer, you can be able to run it. I think I have a Flutter app. I definitely do have a Flutter app. Oh, there's a command that, this download was still running. So I definitely have a Flutter app somewhere. So let's say, which one can I do? I need something that is light.